Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Alix, Pol Sweeney live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. We're streaming live on YouTube as well, so check us out there. So it took longer than expected, but Germany now has a chancellor. Mathieson joins us, Bloomberg News Director for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Roz, like most Americans, I woke up to this news and then I was like, is that a big deal? Apparently it's a big deal not getting kind of elected on that first ballot. Can you give us the context there?
Well, that's right. I mean, it was supposed to be a pro forma moment. It was just a set piece vote in Parliament for him to be formally confirmed by lawmakers as Chancellor. Then he would go off, start cabinet, and he was due to go to Paris tomorrow to meet with the French leader. So it was all supposed to roll off from there. And of course, he'd already done the work to get these big changes through Parliament in terms of removing the debt brake on Germany, big package around infrastructure and defence. So it was quite shocking to see this result, given that he had the numbers in theory to be voted through as Chancellor by Parliament. The question is who voted against him, and if so, why? And so we had this second vote just a short time ago. He got over the line. He needed 316. He got a 325. So they got there. And now he will, of course, go off and be Chancellor. But the fact this happened is just a really negative sign for the start of his administration and for the difficulties that will lie ahead, potentially getting stuff done with Parliament.
So so he already didn't have a mandate. So then now is it like an extra non-mandate?
Well, I mean, he does have a coalition with his bloc and the centre-left Social Democrats. So he's got a functioning coalition in Parliament. But it just shows again that there are lots of strands against him, even within that coalition, and that some lawmakers may object to certain policies. It could be quite difficult to negotiate changes to policy, including with the Social Democrats, with whom which they're in coalition. And what was the intention of these lawmakers in voting against him in this minute was to send a signal that, they are going to be hard on some policy platforms with him, that they're not particularly happy that he's Chancellor. It's really hard to know what happened here today, and therefore the signals from it. But it's not a positive start of confidence, really, in his administration, you'd have to say.
Roz, what is the job one here for Mr. Merz and his government now?
Well, obviously, he's worked already to get that debt brake lifted, which is a really important step for Germany to be able to unshackle itself fiscally and to get these infrastructure and defence packages moving. But also, they've got to now work out how to spend the money. There's a lot to spend on with infrastructure, but there's a lot of red tape also involved and bureaucracy. And so how do you get this money flowing and going where it needs to really structurally kickstart the German economy? Obviously, a lot of external headwinds that, this is Europe's significant economy to grapple with in terms of the Trump administration, tensions on trade, what's happening in the next steps in Russia's war in Ukraine and so on. And Germany needs to be a big voice in all of that. So it's sort of internal questions around the economy. But there's also the far-right AfD, which is the biggest opposition group in Parliament, could be pushing him along on things like migration. So he's got a bunch of domestic challenges. And then he's got the external environment, which is like trade and Ukraine and much, much more.
All right, Roz, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Roz Mathieson, Bloomberg News Director for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Friedrich Merz getting the backing of Parliament in a second vote for Germany's next chancellor. This is the latest ballot of lawmakers after a failure in the first vote that came to a shock as everyone, market participants and politicians alike.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
All right, let's keep going with the DoorDash theme here, agreeing to buy Deliveroo in about less than a $4 billion deal, $3.9 billion U.S. Mandeep Singh, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Tech Industry Analyst, joins us now. What do you make of the price tag?
Well, I mean, it's not one of the expensive acquisitions that we have seen with these online delivery companies. The multiple is quite low. It's about, 1.2 times EV to sales. So, look, when it comes to delivery companies, we know they have had their challenges with profitability. And that's why, Deliveroo, even though it IPO'd a few years back at a much higher valuation, the selling price is a lot lower because of all the execution challenges they had. And in this case, I think DoorDash has a proven track record when it comes to showing better profitability than their peers. So, it's an easy way for them to expand in the UK market, given most of their business is here in the US. And so it does make sense. I mean, the key question is, can they implement their playbook and make the Deliveroo unit profitable in 1 to 2 years?
And Alix, I know you're dying to know this information. JP Morgan advised DoorDash, and Allen & Company and Goldman Sachs advised Deliveroo. So again, bankers getting paid. So that's what we like to see.
I believe in that. Exactly.
Talk to us, Mandeep, about... So I'm avowed, I do not support this home delivery of food thing, and my kids know that, and I won't pay for it. And they get put in the penalty box if I ever see a charge on a credit card. Talk to us about the economics of delivering food here in the U.S. versus Deliveroo wherever they are in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, look, the three-side marketplace businesses are not the easiest to run in terms of unit economics, and that's why, DoorDash has emerged as the category leader, because not only have they executed better in terms of batching efficiencies and really making sure they optimize the time of the person who is delivering the order, but also they've been able to layer on ads. They've been able to layer on some technology solutions where they would do the app or the website of the merchant that they are delivering food from, so they will charge them a fee for that. And all these small things have added to their profitability, in contrast to even an Uber Eats, which is not as profitable as a DoorDash is. So that just goes to show that scale is important in this business, but also operational execution. And that's what I think the DoorDash team has delivered since their IPO.
I guess the question for me is, how much runway do these companies have? Like, how can they grow their total addressable market when in theory, like, you're not going to use this in the middle of a suburb? Maybe you do in the suburb, but not in like a rural area.
I mean, just look at how much they have grown since the pandemic, which is when they got the big bump. And since then, they've been like DoorDash has been compounding top line at a 20% CAGR. And the reason they've been able to do that is they're pretty much doing all last mile delivery. Think Amazon Prime. They are doing that on the delivery side now with grocery delivery, convenience delivery. And that is what gives you the batching efficiency in terms of saying, hey, not only are you helping me deliver food from the restaurant, but also pick up this thing from the convenience store and also this grocery. So all these, when you look at the scale in terms of number of orders and GMV, I mean, DoorDash may do almost $100 billion in GMV this year. So it just goes to show that, there is a market in terms of online conversion of a lot of the things that used to be done in store. And once you digitize the data, you are able to layer on ads, and people will pay for convenience provided the costs are not that high, which is why the delivery side is still a low margin business, but it's all these ancillary services that makes the company profitable, and it comes with scale. So, which is what DoorDash has been able to achieve.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Mandeep, thank you so much. Sweeney, Offspring are still not allowed to use any of these food delivery services.
But they do. They still do.
Once in a while, one will sneak by, and then I shut off the credit card for
I've seen it happen.
Nothing makes me more angry than seeing a delivery at the front door.
Yeah.
I just go mental.
Exactly. So it is convenience, but it's so expensive. The value's not there for me. All right, Mandeep Singh, he does that stuff for a living for Bloomberg Intelligence.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
One of the topics that Alix and I like to revisit on occasion is the commercial real estate business. We'll talk about a business that was really impacted by the pandemic, particularly in some of the larger markets like New York City. So that's why we like chatting with our next guest, Bess Freedman. She's the Chief Executive Officer at Brown Harris Stevens. She's joining us from New York City via the Zoom thing. Bess, thanks so much for joining us here. Here on Lexington Avenue, 58th Street, we still got a lot of vacant retail. Talk to us about that part of the market here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing two different narratives. You're seeing openings, but you're also seeing a lot of closings, and we're just not out of the woods yet. We started to see the early stages of what I would describe as a moderate recovery, but there's still some great challenges, specifically in places like New York City. In San Francisco, I know, has similar challenges, and we need to address issues like homelessness, crime, all of those sorts of things need to be addressed, and safety, and it's impacting our city overall. And so we're getting there. We've made progress. Last year was better than 2023 for sure. Wasn't as good as 2022. And some sectors are performing better than others. Multifamily performed really well and is continuing to do so. And nationwide vacancy rates are at something like 17%. In New York City, it's 17. I think nationwide it's 14. And so for the Q1 2025. So look, it's a mixed bag. There's some good and there's some bad.
What is the most misunderstood piece of the commercial real estate market right now?
I think that, you're hearing, there was a lot of doom and gloom that people were talking about, in early on after COVID. And I think you've seen a decent recovery and the demand is there. And there is demand for office space, just FYI. I think that's misunderstood. There are people that do want to be in the offices. People are requiring it in New York City. And I think that's a good thing. But the demand is for quality. And I think, the B and C office spaces, we're going to have to do something with those. But I do think people have returned to the office, want to be here, even if it's partial and there's hybrid working. I think that, that is misunderstood. There's not this sort of work from home across the country.
Hey, Bess, talk to us about just kind of the lending markets here. Let's say I wanted to develop a property or buy a building. Is my local bank going to be there for me?
Depends. I mean, it all depends on what building, who you are. It's all of those issues. All of those things are important. And there are some loans becoming due at the end of this year and next year. I think next year, 2026, some loans are maturing in the commercial realm. It's something like $1.8 trillion. So that's what people are concerned about. But yes, there is money out there and people will lend. It's tighter than it has been. Credit has been really hard. But at the end of the day, if you are somebody that has done projects and people will lend to you and it's the right project and it makes sense and you can prove it, yes. But it's not what it was. I think the economic uncertainty, the higher rates, inflation, even tariffs, all of that stuff, has people rethinking things and being a little bit more cautious.
I think everyone was kind of waiting for the big fallout to happen, and it never really did.
That's right.
Does that eventually happen, or is it going to be on sort of a property-to-property rolling basis over the long term?
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to, predictions are impossible. None of us know really, because every day is a different news story and what's going on in the economy. So I don't know if there's going to be some sort of huge fallout. If it's going to get rougher, it could. But I do think it depends. It's almost like if you look at retail, which is a mixed bag, you see, Walmart's opening up and Trader Joe's opening up, but then you see Walgreens closing. And so, and so it just depends on what it is. It depends on what is happening and what the business is and where it is and all of those things.
Bess, talk to us about South Florida. Is it still strong or is it rolled over?
South Florida is doing well. It's decent. It's steady. There's demand. And I think there was an article today in the Journal about Florida, and the demand for real estate there is decent. People want to be in Florida. And there has been this sort of migration of businesses moving to Florida. And so I think that has remained the same. I don't see that changing anytime soon. So we'll have to see.
All right, Bess, thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate getting your perspective. Bess Friedrich, she is the Chief Executive Officer of Brown Harris Stevens, giving us an update on kind of global real estate. And again, a little bit of uncertainty out there in just the overall economy, even finding its way into the real estate business. Maybe you're not going to hold off on a certain project or hold off on upgrading or something along.
I feel like this reminds me of the default cycle we were supposed to see in 2016. Like that huge fallout that was supposed to happen that all the private guys were all excited about. That huge wave didn't happen. It didn't mean there weren't opportunities, but that wave didn't happen. It feels like something similar is also evolving in the commercial real estate space as well. Yeah,
and we were told by a lot of bank analysts that you'd see it probably more in the small and mid-sized banks who maybe had some more local commercial real estate and residential real estate, as opposed to the large banks, which really real estate is a small part of their loan portfolio.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Let's talk new energy finance. I don't know how the whole new energy world is going to play out with President Trump here. It just feels like, boy, that's a headwind. But we're going to break it down. So we've got, who do we have here? We've got Pol Lezcano, BloombergBNEF Senior Associate. So, Paul, how do you guys think about wind, solar? I mean, just all these new greener energies. Just frame out for us kind of, is this administration a headwind to that? And if so, by what degree?
Yeah, and thanks for having me back. Certainly, every industry, we have to look at every industry separately, and in conjunction, we have to align to understand what are the common threats, and then what are the individual characteristics of each of those industries. So, so far, we've seen obviously offshore wind has been badly hit, mostly because offshore wind is heavily relying on federal agencies and federal authority, whereas solar has been pretty much unstoppable. There's very little things that Trump and the administration can do to really slow down growth. And then battery storage, which is this nascent technology that's coming to support both solar and wind generation, has also been, I would say, somewhere in the middle, not as badly hit as offshore wind, but tariffs have had a much bigger impact because the U.S. still imports a lot of the batteries from China, because the battery supply chain is not as diversified as the solar or the wind supply chain.
So you guys have a note out that talks about how U.S. clean power build will quadruple by 2035, despite all of these risks. That's a big number. So you mentioned that solar is unstoppable, battery and energy storage potentially also. Can you walk us through your outlook for solar in particular?
Yeah, the reality is the U.S. and pretty much everywhere in the world will need power. What's the fastest, cheapest new source of power generation? It's solar, like hands down. It's easier, quicker to build. If you can get the permits and the grid connection on time, which are really the only bottlenecks to getting new solar built, then it's very, very hard to stop. And we've seen that all over the world, especially now the U.S. Gas, nuclear. There's talks about a renaissance for both of these technologies. But the reality is that there's physical limitations to building gas and to building nuclear that probably most of the audience is very familiar with. With solar, you don't need pipelines. You don't need to build new pipelines. You don't need to approve new pipelines. You just grab panels, you install them, you connect them to the grid, and that's it. And then you have a new source of generation. And the reality is that despite the efforts from the administration to revitalize fossil fuels and nuclear, the easiest thing to build is solar, and it's going to continue to be like that for a long time.
Well, talk to us about the tariffs here. Like, if there's a 140% tariff on a battery coming in from China, doesn't that make a lot of projects just unfeasible economically?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's certainly some battery projects, big battery projects in parts of the US that are going to be delayed. There's going to be probably delayed by 12 to 18 months as everyone figures out what the final tariff on China will be. But the reality is, if we look at what happened to the solar sector in the global solar supply chain back in the day when Obama started introducing high tariffs on solar panels, supply chains reroute very, very quickly. So we do expect eventually within the next couple of years, if tariffs in China continue to be pretty high and the risk of using Chinese batteries remains pretty high, irrespective of what the tariff level is, we do expect some new capacity coming online in South Korea and Southeast Asia, as well as in the US.
What about battery storage and energy storage?
So battery storage is, as I said, it's more hit by tariffs than solar because of its reliance on China. So we assuming a slowdown in new additions because right now the ramp up has been pretty quickly. But the role of battery storage for power markets has been very, very critical over the past couple of years. It has probably arguably saved Texas from blackouts in the past 12 to 18 months because the ability of batteries to ramp up quickly and meet peak demand, it's fascinating and it's really quick to dispatch. And we think it's going to play a bigger role in markets outside of Texas too in the U.S.
How hard is it to get connected to the grid? If I build a wind farm in the middle of West Texas, like I saw on Landman, they're off the grid. How do you get stuff to the grid?
It's very, very difficult. Some of the difficulties are obvious when there's a very, very long distance between where you're building the farm and where you want to deliver the power. So you need to get transmission built, which means you need to get everyone along the way who owns the land where those transmission lines are going to be to approve, to allow you to build it, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, is a very, very tedious process. You need different regulatory approvals. And then to get connected to the grid, you have to undergo years and years of different system studies where they have to assess what's going to happen if your wind farm now connects to the grid. What's going to happen to all the power flows going in all directions? Imagine just doing that study for one farm, and they do this for pretty much everyone who's applying for the grid at the same time or at the same grid connection point. So the engineering is really, really complicated, and it's been by far the biggest bottleneck of getting any new source of power generation. And is it
easier to do that or build a pipeline? 30 seconds.
Easier to do that than build a pipeline, I would say, except if you're in Texas or Louisiana.
Okay, well, no, that's a fair point. Also, I'm obsessed with the transformers, like the thing you need to plug into the grid, like just that one piece of equipment. The backlog is huge.
Remember, the frequencies have to match as well, because otherwise you will have big problems.
Hence all the years of study. And then also the questions of how much alternative or intermittent energy you want on a grid. Just ask Spain and their blackout from a couple weeks ago. All right, it was really great to see you. Thank you very, very much. Pol Lezcano, he joins us from Bloomberg BNEF. They do all the great research on energy across the board, whether clean energy or otherwise. And they do technology and they do financing. It's really quite interesting. You should definitely check out their research.
This is the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live each weekday, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.